Welcome to Fandom Power.
Hey guys, welcome back to Fandom Power. This week it's week 2 of Fandom Power presents The Fan Batch. Once again, I'm joined here in studio with producer Andy.
Hello.
And our other co-host out in Halifax. Welcome back, Hank McLaughlin, you superstar, you.
Hello, world.
Tell me a little bit, let's use this first few seconds here. Tell me about Vile Groove.
Oh, wow. So I met a guy. Boy meets boy.
Nice.
I met a guy, and he makes dope beats. I write rhymes a lot. I've been writing rhymes since I was a kid. You can attest to that.
I
Wes.
can. Yes, I
I've
can.
been into hip hop like it's my religion.
Your whole life.
Since I was probably about 13 years old.
Yep.
And I've always wanted to do something with it, but I never felt. Writing rhymes and stuff like that, and dabbling here and there has always been a compulsion. But I've always had people like, hey man, because I'm constantly doing it at work, and if you worked for me, you'd be like, my boss is the weirdest guy, or either that or my boss.
Because he doesn't shut up.
Because I just freestyle all day long, especially if I'm in a good mood.
Yeah.
All day long.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are like, hey, I make beats and check them out, and I've never really connected with anybody like that.
Right.
And this thing was crazy organic. This kid is super talented, and in the middle of a pandemic where we share a work bubble.
Yeah.
It's sort of perfect to be able to share like a music bubble as well. And so I mean, just some cool collaborations with some local talent like Aquaculture. Check that band out, guys.
Yeah.
If you haven't, they're a really talented band from Halifax. And just old seeds that I'd never really thought would ever bear flower. Weird, like, I'm going to be a rapper. I'm almost 50. I think I'm going to make a rap album. And it's awesome. I wouldn't have it any other way, actually.
Well, I know that we've been sort of following this evolution as it's sort of come together. As somebody on the outside, I would say rather quickly, because out of nowhere, suddenly there was a single, and then there were 2 singles. And we watched the YouTube videos and kind of went, holy shit, that's good.
It's really coming together. We just had a little like sort of fun run on merch just as a lark. We happened upon, and I guess a lot of this stuff is kismet.
Sure.
And so, we ran a ridiculously low run of hats and sold them out. And like, it turned out to be about 6 hours.
Nice.
Didn't really expect that, but that was super cool. So we're going to do a little bit more stuff. Jaden Shea, that's the guy. That's Vile's real name.
Yeah.
He's doing a little like old school CDR. He's going to burn our music on CDRs.
Right,
and we're
right.
going to hand number them and autograph them. And
that's really cool.
Give them out and stuff. It's cheap. It's really cheap to do little fan service things.
Yeah.
That does stickers, which is a great way to because you can put them up anywhere.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily legal, but do what you want, kids. It's the Rebel Alliance.
I mean, we contemplated a sticker campaign for our show, and then thought it was too traceable back to us, and because we're closer to 50 than we are to 40, and nobody wants to be in trouble.
Well, yeah, and that's it. But so I mean, we're doing 200 holographic 2-inch stickers.
Oh, that's cool.
$45 American.
That's really cool.
It's a really good deal. And I'm just actually working with other cats and having another outlet. I'm just so creatively, I'm so busy right now. It's kind of mental, which is, I'm super busy at work too. Like work is construction during this pandemic is the cost of doing business, the ability to do business. It's very taxing on sort of, I guess you would call it real life. Although I like to keep music and this as my real life if I can. I kind of like Lauren says, when you come home, punch out.
Right.
Punch into real life, you know what I mean?
That's right.
Which is difficult. But yeah, no, I'm hitting this like creative thing, this sort of weird stride, and it's a great time to do it because I know a lot of people that at my age are like, what am I going to do now? Or like, I've done this my whole life. And it's it's nice to like the game doesn't end,
No, it doesn't.
Like, so it's nice to have fresh new stuff every day, and at least creatively it's yeah, it's real cool, man. If you guys want to check it out, Vile Groove on Bandcamp, all one word. Vile Groove on SoundCloud. Hank Solo, that's my rap name.
Yep.
You can check us out on YouTube and all kinds of other formats, and we're probably going to have something physical out. Well, we'll see how the pandemic goes. We're trying to put something physical, something cool for like hip hop fans, like a vinyl, which would be really cool. It's expensive, but we're having so much fun. So if you check it out, check us out on all those things. But check us out here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our Star Wars jam.
Yeah, so it's the fan batch, and we're back with it's week 2, although this is episode 3. So I'm back to form this week. I know we discussed last week that I might have been a little bit predisposed to maybe not liking the show based on my own sort of biases. And,
but let's just qualify. Who can deny, though, right? Where you're coming from is who can deny how good Republic Commando the game was?
Yeah, and I mean, good enough that it just got a re-release. So, I mean, people who missed that game back on the original Xbox are now discovering it. And I think, I hope that those characters are just as endearing now as they were back then. Certainly they were endearing enough to at least get a spot in the Clone Wars proper. So,
right. And so I think if you caught the deep cut to the Republic Commandos directly in this,
yep.
I hope you did, but if you didn't, we'll get into it soon because it's
in this episode,
really, really cool. In this episode,
oh man, so you're already touching on stuff that I completely missed. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that one.
It's so subtle too. It's subtle as hell. Wicked. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. This one, it's episode 3. It's called The Replacements. Although if you looked at your Disney Plus yesterday, it actually said episode 3. So I was a little nervous that what did they just get lazy? Just call it episode 3. Depending on when you're listening to this debuted, Replacements debuted Friday, May 14th, 2021. This one is written by Matt Mcnavitz. Now, if you're not familiar with that name, let me just put you at ease and tell you that he was the lead writer for seasons 6 and 7 of the Clone Wars. And in fact, he did write the original Bad Batch arc.
We are in great company, guys.
Yeah.
This is fantastic.
He also wrote the arcs for Cad Bane and the Young Boba Fett, as well as a 4-episode arc around Maul. The 4-episode arc that never got produced because the show was canceled. The same 4-episode arc that later would be adapted to Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir.
Nice.
Yeah. Several episodes of Rebels, and he was the co-writer on Jedi Fallen Order. So yeah, this guy's got some pretty good Star Wars lineage.
Nice.
This one's directed by a familiar name, Nathaniel Villanova, same as last episode. Runtime on this one, it's 24:47 without your credits. And the episode synopsis this week is pretty short. The Bad Batch gets stuck on a desolate moon. All right, let's go. The episode opens with the Havoc Marauder limping through hyperspace. Electrical surges can be seen arcing across the ship's hull. It appears that the damage from blasting their way out of Seleucami was more severe than we thought. In the back of the ship, Omega is sitting on the deck leaning against the Gonk droid that the squad had picked up in the last episode while she reads from a datapad. Hunter comes back to offer up some rations, and Wrecker leaps down from the rear turret/observation dome and emphatically devours his and then asks for more. Hunter tells him that the rations are low, and that's all there is. Without hesitation, Omega offers Wrecker her ration, but before he can reach it, Hunter nudges Wrecker a few feet across the deck and scolds him. She doesn't even have a place to sleep, and you want to take her food too? Wrecker, realizing the error of his ways, politely declines the food, and Omega nonchalantly gives him an okay and goes back to her reading. Wrecker and Hunter share a moment of reflection as they point out that none of them are used to having children around. Just want to talk about the dynamic between Wrecker and Omega for a second, because we saw it sort of early on in the last episode. They sort of share this
very sibling-like.
Yeah, there's a kinship there, and I know it's kind of it's come up for me before, and it's come up again in this episode where, again, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but the simplicity that the Wrecker character is written, I think maybe that, there's that childlike innocence where he's essentially a child in a man's body. Mm-hmm. I think it kind of plays into that, how he's able to connect with her because, intellectually they might be closer than we think.
He learns the simple things real quick. Like he learned that lesson in the last episode. He was the first one to respond to Cut's method of, he was the first one to walk over to her and go, "Are you okay?" Yeah. And he learns real quick here. All right. Yeah, no, you're right. I don't want any extra food. But there's a really important thing with Omega here that I think actually continues to reinforce our theory that she's force sensitive. And I guess it's a lot of people's theories now.
Yeah.
She gives without thought of reward.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah.
Right? So where do we know that from? We know that from the Phantom Menace and Shmi's description to Qui-Gon of
Anakin Skywalker. Yeah.
He gives with no thought of reward. That's a Jedi trait.
Yeah, very much so.
So I as soon as I was like, and it's so, it's so innocent. You can have mine.
Yeah.
It's not, there's no it's so for me, that was a huge fish hook in the water, if you will, for her being force sensitive.
I think one of the other, tonally, thematically that comes through here is that up until now, I mean, here's Wrecker who without, not reckless abandon, but he's just like, hit me again, I think is the term that he uses. And I think prior to Omega coming along, that's probably the way it was. Like he's a big guy. He's used to like, oh, I need another one. So he just gets another one. The idea that, because of that, there's a new dynamic now with what is really a 10-year-old girl. They've all got to come to terms with the way that they did things may not be the way that they can do things going forward because, like you say, not having children around, there's a whole new set of considerations that have to be made.
It's true.
Very true. For me, go ahead.
No, it's just that watching them all, we certainly see the parenting or the connecting parts of the team are Hunter and Wrecker, while Echo and Tech have been at arm's length, if not completely uninvolved. In the
sibling kind of...
In sort of the interactions with Omega and stuff.
Like, yeah, you're right.
They in terms of like giving her lessons or learning about nuanced interactions with her, and they those two characters I've noticed have been sort of removed from those roles.
I wonder, I just assume that that's probably just a writing choice that I suspect that down the road that they will all get their moment with her where they all connect on some level.
I really enjoy the interaction between Tech and Echo in this. So they're developing a neat dynamic.
Yeah, I enjoyed that as well.
You could stray really close into them being sort of the same character.
Almost, yeah.
Right. So
two sides of the same coin, really.
Exactly. So it's nice to see them developing some sort of dynamic there.
We talked before about how the episode titles, are often very cleverly tied directly to the themes of the episode, and this one's called...
I wrote a lot of notes about this one.
Yeah, this one being called Replacements. I think, for us as a viewer, we really get that first dip into replacement territory when we're looking at Omega as potentially Crosshair's replacement.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And then thematically, the replacement of the clone army, which is a theme that was set up last episode, but you sort of later on in the episode you get to physically see that in place.
Yep.
And then just in the greater scope of things, what is happening now, if nothing else, galactically, is the replacement of the Republic by the Empire.
Oh yeah.
So it's a huge broad stroke at the same time. It's right
very
down
much
to the minutia. So they're so clever with these titles.
So just then a power surge erupts and the interior lights dim. Hunter and Echo share some banter about having already fixed them, and Echo sarcastically adds, "Add it to the list." Echo, taking a seat in the cockpit, confirms how banged up the Havoc Marauder really is, and frustratingly tells Tech that things would go faster if he had some help. But Tech, in his what I've chose to call his unfiltered obviousness, tells him that the scanner he is building to test the functionality of the inhibitor chips takes precedence. So, anybody else, like, thoroughly, completely, shockingly amazed that Tech is intuitively building a medical device?
Not really.
Logically, that's the most important thing that they should be doing. After watching one of their own get compromised,
Yeah.
and knowing that there's a thing in their heads that's doing that is completely logical for Tech to be the highest priority. They should all sort of be bending their will towards that. And I think that's the underlying theme, like that they're actively working on some sort of solution to that.
And I think that's really cool in a cross the streams kind of way. You remember there was an episode of Star Trek, and I think it was a TNG episode, where there was a medical issue and they couldn't figure it out, and it needed, I think it was Barclay, they needed to take an engineering approach. So I feel this is kind of similar, where you have a guy who's, Tech is very indicative of technologically inclined. I feel it's a similar, he's trying to solve a medical problem with an engineering, approach. But what I find, this is where I'm like, what's shocking to me is that here's a guy who's making what looks like a handheld device to scan for a thing that a dedicated medical bay on a Star Destroyer could not find without force intervention.
Yeah.
Does that not speak to his level of, like, ability?
It certainly does. That's Anakin level tinkering.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's a 10-year-old building a protocol droid. And did you notice the Easter egg here? He's using the plasma cutter a la Leia.
I did.
From Empire Strikes Back.
Yes, I did see that.
Yeah.
So that begs the question now. If Tech can design a device that's able to not only scan and determine the efficacy of these chips, do we think that same device could be used to alter or defeat clone programming?
Certainly. I mean, if you could replicate the device and start, popping them on heads or putting them in helmets or something like that.
Yeah.
Again, is it a device that, while in contact with the chip, alters the chip, or is it something that can actually alter the chip? It seems like, so we've already got a sort of a benchmark for the best way to approach this,
which
is to just remove the chip.
Yeah.
So while scanning the chip to see if it's going to affect you in the future seems, it's kind of like the way I approach my thyroid thing. I'm like, just cut it out of me if it's a problem.
Yeah.
If you can replace its functionality with something else that isn't harming me, go ahead.
Sure.
Drop it out. So, and in terms of that, it's makes more sense to just remove the chip, since we know that it can be done, since we know that there are nothing but beneficial effects to the clone that the chips are removed from.
So I'd be very curious. That was my thought too. Like, if they can detect it, then they can start working on, and I went to initially like either changing or altering the programming, because I didn't know if maybe they would have the surgical acumen to do this. Certainly they could try and get a droid to do it.
Right. AZ.
Yeah. And AZ survived, by the way. We're gonna meet him again this episode.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so I thought it was cool. And so this right away, thematically, maybe not even thematically, you get the sense that this is the first indication that, like, oh, there's a chance that maybe, because given, Omega's conversation with Crosshair back in the prison cell about it's not your fault, and now there's potentially a device that can actually figure out what's going wrong. You're given that sense of, and again, that sense of hope, because it's a big Star Wars theme. Maybe we can get him back, even though they don't say that.
No, but a line later on from Omega, they kind of hammer on that.
That's
point.
right.
Well, see, and there's something that's going to also come up here too in a minute, where there might be another character that higher stakes, I guess. Like, we're all sort of resigned to not like Crosshair, but
yeah,
if something were to happen to somebody else, it might raise the stakes of needing to alter that chip or figure that chip out in a faster way.
Yeah, I agree with you. So it's at this point that Tech quite dismissively tells Echo that no critical systems were compromised.
He's awesome.
And then the ship immediately lurches out of hyperspace in a nosedive toward a moon orbiting a large blue unnamed planet.
And then he gives my favorite line of the episode, actually.
More of his unfiltered way about life support being unaffected.
It's not affecting life support. We're fine.
We're fine.
Yeah, we're fine.
And then Hunter, are you kidding me?
So good.
Echo tells us that a power capacitor is blown and they need to land immediately, so everyone straps in for the crash. The atmosphere is thick and black, and neither Echo nor Tech can see anything. After wrestling with the controls for a bit, the viewport suddenly clears and we can see the cratered surface of a moon below. It looks a lot like our own moon. So there's this whole sequence in the crash with Wrecker, going back to that sort of simplicity. We're going to die, we're going to die, we're going to die. And then he looks over and sees Omega, and she's feeding off of his energy. And he quickly we're going to be fine.
We're going to be fine.
It's so good. And I missed it the first watch. I caught it when he banged his head.
Yeah, I got that right away.
I got it as a comedic beat, right?
I did too.
He's Lunk, right? He's that.
Yeah,
character.
Absolutely. He's the.
So I only took it as a comedic beat, and now I can't sleep.
I think we've all kind of hit the same sort of I still don't know how. I mean, Wrecker is my least favorite. He was that right from the get go, and this just reinforces that. And I have to remember that the show was not necessarily written just for me. So yes, he is comic relief, and yes, this was a comic relief moment, whether I liked it or not, which I have to say, this one just reminds me, that simplicity, while it's an asset in combat, right? Because he says, I just want to blow stuff up. Great.
That's right.
But outside of that, like I said before, he's a child in an adult body. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a strength for him in how he connects with Omega. But outside of that, I actually find it pretty annoying.
We'll get into it in a minute, but that pain in his head he ostensibly could be the most formidable foe they have.
Absolutely.
And to see it's so dark. This is so dark, this episode in particular, that I go, wow, they could really do something dark here. And literally have these guys go one at a time until they find a solution. There could be a second season of trying to regroup them all
to get everybody back.
But it could be just Hunter and Omega at the end, kind of thing. But I'm a little different than you. I really like Wrecker a lot. I really like him. He's kind of like a very simple version of the Thing for me.
Oh yeah,
from the
I can
Fantastic
see that. Yeah,
Four.
I can see that.
But and such the sort of the childlike wonder and the innocence of his I want to smash things though could be so tragic.
Yeah.
To get this 66 madness happening.
Well, I mean, let's look at it. Let me put the of mice and men filter on that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Lenny is not a bad person. He's just who he is. And unfortunately, when he gets going, there's no stopping him.
Tell me about the rabbits.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's very true.
For those of you who've never read Of Mice and Men, it's a absolute classic. I absolutely despised it in high school, but I've since learned to really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's funny what we were forced to read in high school.
I know.
We read as adults and went, "Oh, that was actually brilliant."
I still hate Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. Anyway, we can go there. Mm-hmm.
All right. The wings of the Havoc Marauder fold up just in time as the ship lands hard, sliding several meters before coming to rest on the landing struts. After checking to make sure that everyone is all right, the clones set about to determine what to do next. Echo remarks that the storm that they just flew is getting worse and it's knocking out their comms. Which really, okay, but really, if they weren't knocked out, who are you going to call?
I think that factors in later, though.
It does factor in later, and I know that it's to establish that, but it's just wait a minute, you guys are already on the run. Who are you going to call? You know what I mean? We've already missed Rex, so we don't know where he is yet. And the one guy that we did know has taken off on a shuttle with his family. So I just thought that kind of a little contrived. Tech informs the others that he suspects that the power capacitor was damaged in the firefight on Seleucami, but that they also happen to have a spare on board.
Perfect.
Omega pulls out a metal crate asking, "Is it in here?" while everyone else stops and stares at her in complete silence. Not understanding what's going on, Omega asks, "What?" Hunter solemnly reveals that the crate is Crosshair's weapons kit, while Wrecker breaks the tension by saying, "I miss him." And there's some banter about Wrecker being shot by Crosshair, which Wrecker appears to reminisce about with a fondness.
So, and this here reinforces the fact that he's about to complain about the pain in his head. When getting shot by Crosshair is something that he's like, yeah, that really hurt, you know?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
There's something that just reinforces the fact that what's going on in his head is just, I'm so scared, I'm so worried.
For me, it's also, this picks up on the whole, again, dipping into the replacement idea that everybody's, it's all eyes on Omega, and she's standing there with Crosshair's gear.
Correct.
And they're just kind of staring at her, and it's like, oh, he's not here, but you are. And right. So it's that.
By the end, she's in his bunk. Right?
Yeah. But it's cool, though, because do you get the impression that at this time, they're actually kind of mourning the loss, whereas in the previous episode, Hunter especially, he was angry about Crosshair, him turning on them.
Well, he is the one that says, hey, he shot you. So he's still trying to justify his anger, or, because he has to feel some type of way about it, probably, deeper, that had to have been his friend on some level.
Yeah. Tech interjects with the idea that Crosshair's actions were influenced by his inhibitor chip. Echo looks towards Omega and asks, "It can do that?" And Omega tells them that's what it was designed to do. Mm-hmm. Wrecker posits, so it wasn't Crosshair's fault, but Hunter refocuses the conversation by getting everyone back on task with fixing the ship.
That's right.
We switch to an exterior shot of the cloning facility on Camino. Inside the facility, we see Crosshair on a table in a medical bay. He's laying inside a large scanner reminiscent of an MRI machine. It's the same machine we saw in Episode 1 that was used to reinforce Crosshair's programming. The table slides out from the scanner, and Crosshair sits up as AZ-3 reports that his vitals are optimal. Crosshair orders the droid to go away. In an adjacent room, Nala Se and Admiral Tarkin, or I should just say Tarkin at this point, because that's going to come up in a bit.
Yep.
Tarkin watch as she tells him that Crosshair is responding favorably to the procedure, as Tarkin rebuffs her by saying, "Let's see if he stays that way."
That's right.
The line ties directly to what Clone Force 99 were pondering on the ship about it wasn't his fault. The message to us as viewers is clearly one of he can be saved. Now, I'm more inclined to believe that Omega's comment to Crosshair in the holding facility back in Episode 1 was more about her speaking to the knowledge of how the inhibitor chip works, and that it was having a more pronounced effect on him. So the question of force sensitivity, it's still kind of in question for me. Talking about Omega and her comment to Crosshair back in the holding facility on Camino in Episode 1, we talked about the musical cue where we thought she might be force sensitive, and I'm kind of at a point now where I'm second guessing that, and I'm questioning if this is just, clone intuition and her inherent knowledge that, she's on the inside of how the inhibitor chips actually work.
Well, working with Nala Se, she would be privy to a lot of that knowledge.
Yeah, and I mean, it comes out, and of course, she's not offering it, right? It's always a direct when they ask her, and she's like, "Well, yeah," so she shares that unfilteredness that Tech does, I guess, but only when asked.
No, it's very true. There are a lot of other little things that I think are leading me down the force sensitive path, especially the giving. She's got this intuition, so we'll see.
I am definitely not ruling it out. It is a strong potential, but then again, with the way that this episode kind of lays the foundation for what we know is to come in other Star Wars properties,
right?
I kind of wonder if there's something else going on in place of or in addition to. I guess we can say it that way.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. There could be a whole sort of new thing, new types of abilities like that. So yeah, it's interesting.
From the shadows, another Imperial officer approaches and addresses Tarkin. His name is Vice Admiral Rampart, and we learn that he is the officer responsible for the implementation of the chain code program. We also learn that he and Tarkin share the same enthusiasm toward the establishment of the new order that is the Empire.
Totally glossed over it last episode, but he was the giant hologram on Silicon that was instructing people to trade their credits in for Imperial credits.
Right.
Register for your chain code today.
Oh, I totally missed that part.
Yeah, so did I. I had to go back and check it out because I thought I didn't know whether that guy was from Legends or whether he was.
I want to say he's a new character.
He's totally a new character.
Yeah, he's a new character.
100%.
So that brings me to something I thought was really cool, and I want to talk about it for a second. We talked about it before in the Clone Wars, how rank structure is not necessarily cut and dry in Star Wars.
That's right.
And it's even more convoluted in the Imperial military with the blending of, particularly with uniforms and stuff, right? I mean, you saw Han Solo a la his Mud Trooper uniform. And I mean, short of the chest armor and the helmet, you take all that off, he looks like an Imperial naval officer. So there's this real blurring of the lines. So it makes it difficult to sort of figure out who people are. And the only reason I know that it's Vice Admiral Rampart is the descriptive audio told me so. Because they don't actually tell you that he's a Vice Admiral. But it gets a little more convoluted because if you look at his rank plaque,
right,
Rampart's rank plaque... Where I got to find it here. It's a single line of pips, and his rank plaque, depending on what sources you're looking at, Rampart's rank plaque would suggest that he's actually a rear admiral, not a vice admiral. Right. But then it gets more convoluted because, again, depending on the source, and I'm leaning into Legends a lot here, particularly around the role-playing game. Code cylinders also come into play in terms of rank and security clearance. Well, he's carrying 4 code cylinders. Well, that's the same as Tarkin. So, you know, in some sources, 4 code cylinders would only be a full general or a full admiral or higher. So there's some inconsistency there. And I don't know, do I take the descriptive audio at face value that he's a vice admiral, or do I take the rank plaque at face value and he's a rear admiral?
So I think he's promoted in this episode.
He gets promoted at the end of the episode.
Right. So, I mean, instead of altering the animation, you know, that subtly, I think that's his model, and maybe the rank might change. Did you notice the rank change on Tarkin's?
I did. So
they added the yellow.
I wanted to say that this is the first canonical reference to Tarkin as a governor.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right.
And the governors, you'll recall from the little speech in A New Hope, are who are in power.
That's right. The regional governors will assume control of their systems
after they dissolve the Senate, which is coming up in
That's
approximately 10 to 15 years. So
yeah,
you see how Tarkin's gone from sort of military commander to high level politician, if you will, like high level, like, you know, ranking member of this establishment. If you look at in the role-playing games, I think it's the Imperial source book, there's like a tree of the Emperor's power, and you when you look at it, you see how high Tarkin is actually on that tree. Yeah,
he's like 1 or 2 steps removed. I mean, you know,
1 or 2 steps removed from the absolute Emperor. And he's a nasty character too.
The line from Leia about Vader being on Tarkin's leash, that has to be a clear indication of how much political influence he has.
Absolutely.
There are very, very few people in Star Wars that can actually hold sway over Vader.
Vader, release him.
Right. So Tarkin's rank plaque, I went back and I actually watched episode 1 just to make sure that what I thought I was seeing was what I was seeing. And for the listeners out there, guys, honestly, depending on what source you look up, and I mean, just do a simple Google search for Imperial military rank pins, and the number of images that you're going to get that conflict with each other. And you're going to see Navy terms and Army terms, and they're going to conflict with each other. So Tarkin's rank plaque back in episode 1, it consists of 2 horizontal rows of square pips. Each row is 6 pips each. The top row is entirely made of blue, and the lower is entirely red. And like you said, Hank, in this episode, the lower one has changed because now it's 3 red and 3 yellow.
That's right.
So that's a clear he's been promoted and elevated. Yeah, so cool. The rank thing really had me like, ooh, it was kind of a little fanboy moment for me.
And it just brings us closer and closer. So, I can envision, just like Rogue One, these things, the way we overlapped from Revenge of the Sith.
Yep.
Like we're going to perhaps one day overlap right into A New Hope. Like Rebels does that close, and
it does.
Certainly Rogue One does it, but in an animated form, we get to see another. There's other things going on in the galaxy at the moment of the battle of Scarif and Rogue One. So
that's right.
It gets you, it's a many spoked wheel that we get to see all these approaches to it. It's kind of nice. I really, really like it. I'm really enjoying seeing the birth of the Empire.
The Empire, yeah.
I mean, we saw the actual physical birth of the Empire.
Yes.
Like literally Padme gives birth, right? And it's at that moment. But it's now we're watching it become this monstrous child.
Oh, absolutely. And to see it grow and be nurtured and how it's nurtured, and just, that was one of the big questions about, Tarkin's character arc from Clone Wars through to A New Hope. And it's like Tarkin's this like, celebrated military naval commander, and, you don't get a sense of like, oh, he's this big evil genius, but to see him slowly just, I guess you could say, drink the Kool-Aid or eat the Jell-O and actually just totally embrace. It really just speaks to the idea of, people who have power crave more.
Oh, everybody out there, check out the Tarkin novel.
Oh, yeah.
It's spectacular. And he's really good in the comics. There's an issue of the Vader comic where they pair Tarkin with Vader, and Tarkin is one of the galaxy's like sort of supreme game hunters. They sort of get into he comes from a culture of that, and so he ostensibly tests Vader by hunting him in one of the comics, and it's more of a draw than you would think, bro. It's serious. I'll find a link to that comic and I'll throw it out there for everybody.
Rampart, looking at Crosshair, asks if he's the enhanced clone from the report, to which Nala Se confirms that he is. Tarkin then asks Rampart about the status of something called Project Warmantle, and Rampart tells him that it is on schedule, and that the top recruits are there, ready to begin their training under their new commander. All right, Project Warmantle.
Oh, yeah.
Project Warmantle was one of the projects that came up on the computer screen on Scarif when Jyn Erso and Cassian Andor were searching for the Death Star plans.
Yes, sir.
So we get the impression that a lot of the stuff that we just presumed, that's, I guess, again, dipping into Legends content, that somehow the clones are going to be, as the clones are phased out, the senior clones are going to take up that sort of training role for these new recruits. Something that we're going to see play out a little bit more in this episode. Escorted by Tarkin and Rampart, Crosshair and Nala Se walk down a corridor as Rampart espouses the need for an increase in soldiers to ensure a strong ruling government. Nala Se asserts that the Kaminoan cloning facility can meet the task, but Rampart isn't having it. He says that sustaining a vast engagement isn't something the clones should do alone, and there are other ways of producing loyal soldiers. Entering a hangar, the group is met by a squad of 4 soldiers, but these are not clones. 2 men and 2 women, all adorned in blacked-out Phase 3 clone armor with their helmets slung under their arms. Rampart introduces them as the Empire's first elite squad and goes on about how they are the top human soldiers recruited from across the galaxy. Rampart fantasizes that more squads like this one, trained by veteran clones, would make for a formidable army, and Tarkin agrees, stating that he sees promise in the idea. Meanwhile, back at the crash site, Echo and Tech set about to make repairs to the Havoc Marauder. The atmosphere isn't breathable, so they wear breath masks. Removing the appropriate panel, they replace the damaged capacitor with the spare one. On the nose of the ship, outside the light of their torches, a reptilian creature can be seen scurrying over the cockpit unnoticed. A faint snarling noise can be heard in the distance, and Echo turns to shine his torch in the direction of the sound with a, "What was that?" Tech, too engrossed in repairing the ship, ignores the question, and Echo moves off on his own to investigate the noise. A short distance from the cockpit, Echo spots a cluster of hollow, tube-like protrusions in the ground. He studies them for a moment before he hears an even louder rustling. Spotting what appears to be claw marks on the hull of the ship, Echo calls Tech to come and look at the damage. He closes the panel containing the capacitor and goes to meet Echo, completely unaware that the reptilian creature was hanging upside down from the wing, watching him all the time. And as the two clones go off to investigate the source of the claw marks, the reptilian creature rips the newly replaced power capacitor from the ship and runs off into the darkness.
Not yet, it doesn't.
How'd I miss that?
Because it doesn't run yet, because Omega is about to see it run across the windshield when they go back inside to say something's wrong.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't run away, but it runs off out of frame. Yeah, okay.
Out of frame, yeah.
I thought I'd missed something, but no, you're right. Inside the shuttle, Omega plays with a breath mask, turning it on and off, while Wrecker paces by clutching his head in pain. Hunter asks, "What's wrong with you?" And Wrecker says he must have hit his head in the crash. So we know that he absolutely did hit his head in the crash. And
and we know that he's really good at pain, so this is a problem for me.
It is a problem, and I think we all kind of hit the same sort of like suspicions with this one because
they keep going back to it.
Yeah.
What it does is now it's not like, okay, so Crosshair put sort of the military dynamic of the group in jeopardy in terms of control, in terms of command, in terms of introducing a bad guy. But what Wrecker having a problem with his chip might do is put Omega in harm's way in a very grave way. So it's a higher stakes chip to activate, if you will.
No, I agree.
From a storytelling capacity, it's like, I don't want it to happen. It's tragic.
Tech talking about
it's a nice race though. Like they're racing towards Tech trying to figure out the device and them all starting to break down.
Potentially having that, yeah. And that, that is talking about breaking down, that comes up again towards the end of the episode when they talk about the genetic material. So does that have an impact on, clones who are already in existence? Maybe, maybe not.
Good question.
With their accelerated growth, it could.
Well, this is it, right? Who knows?
That's going to come up in my point very, very shortly, actually. I'm about to go down a rabbit hole.
I said, if it were the real world and this guy came, I saw him hit his head like that, and the amount of attention that the episode places on this, because they come back to it a couple of more times, I'd be like, is this just a bump on the head, or is there a brain bleed? Is there something going on here?
And so, well,
that's what I mean, and that's where I went to was like, oh, has he like turned something on or jarred something? So, like you say, Hank, it could get very grave very quickly.
Right, and this is very much darker show than we've seen before, and
it is
fairly dark. And this is darker than anything Star Wars has done before.
And let's just for a second pause and outside of Crosshair, who's got that creepy crosshair, I don't know if it's a tattoo or a scar. Wrecker has got a half burned off head, cataract, like he is the scariest looking dude in the squad. So I mean, if he turns, like, that's going to be horrific.
Yeah, he's missing an eye. He's the size of a Hulk. We've seen him push 3 tanks off a cliff.
Yeah,
we've seen him. I mean, man, yeah,
manhandling droids for workouts.
Exactly. Yeah, doing bicep curls with a gonk droid.
That's right. And that level of if you turn, like you were saying before of Mice and Men, if you turn that level of innocence, if you turn a lawful good character into a lawful evil character, that innocence becomes incredibly dangerous.
Oh yeah.
You get Frankenstein strangling a girl and not understanding it's not a flower to be plucked.
We just watched, sorry, it's a tangent here, but we just watched Brightburn the other night.
Yes.
And that is exactly what's going on there. Yeah. Echo and Tech turn up to report to Hunter that the new capacitor is in place, but now other systems are starting to fail. Echo mentions that something is damaging the hull of the ship. And just as Hunter asks him to narrow that down, everything on the ship goes dark. The stomping of footsteps on the outer hull can be heard from above. Omega, sitting in the cockpit, looks out the viewport and is startled as the reptilian creature darts across the glass. The 4-legged, long-tailed reptilian creature now pulsates with a blue-green energy wave that travels from its head to its tail. Wrecker blurts out, "What was that?" And Omega enthusiastically describes the creature, noting that it also ran off with the part. A quick look at the view screen by Echo confirms that the part is indeed gone. There's a little bit of Aurebesh there, and I got it. Yeah, so the readout actually says, capacitor not found. Tech surmises that the creature must be an Ordo moondragon, a species that feeds on raw energy. So, do you want to talk about Ordo moondragons for a minute?
I kind of do.
So do I. Do you want to go first?
Okay. Red pill or blue pill?
Yeah, I know. I have both as well.
Okay.
I wonder if yours are the same as mine.
So let's
get the easy one out of the way.
Right. Ordo is a Mandalorian planet.
Oh, I was thinking Canderous Ordo.
Well, I kind of have an order to my madness.
Sure.
So let's start with Ordo as the Mandalorian world.
Yep, let's do that.
Recently in canon,
yep,
I couldn't tell you if it's a comic or a novel, but Dryden Voss has visited the world Ordo.
Okay.
And he's stolen a sacred Mandalorian lance.
Interesting.
It might be the one that's in Solo. And Ordo is blaming a clan from Crow Nest, right?
Yeah.
Which we know is the clan Wren is where inhabiting Crow Nest.
That's
and
right.
Then the story goes a little further, and this is a little off track, but Dryden Voss also steals Crow Nest's sacred Mandalorian emblem and stuff.
Interesting.
In canon, very recently within the lore, but so that's the planet Ordo. It's much like Crow Nest. It's much like it's a planet colonized by Mandalorians and is one of their inhabited worlds, and what they have many systems. And then it's also a character, and this is where we get real cool. Before Canderous Ordo, there's a character called Ordo Scarata.
Okay.
And Ordo Scarata in Legends is one of the Republic commandos. And
interesting.
In the Legends novels, sort of revolving around the game.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about the game. I don't know if the characters were named specifically.
No, they had like Torch, Fixer, and the third guy who Scorch, Fixer, and the third one I cannot remember.
Right. So this fellow was part of Null Squad. They were the first cloned from Jango Fett by the Kaminoans, and I don't know how many there were.
Yeah.
This particular Ordo Scarata was clone Null 11.
Okay.
And was trained personally in a small group by Jango Fett himself.
Right.
Who instilled in them the Mandalorian ways.
Okay.
So we're still in that whole wheelhouse, like
I do, yeah. It totally makes sense to me.
Into the Mandalorian homeworld and the Jedi homeworld in Mandalore. This is another that level dive into that. So while training Ordo Scarata, Jango Fett realizes that this guy is the truth. He's right off the chip off the old block, if you will, and names him Ordo from Null 11 after Canderous Ordo.
Yes.
And that's where we get into your dive, which is a character from the Knights of the Old Republic game.
Yeah. And
was actually at one point the Mandalore.
Yeah, it was Mandalore, for a while.
Was Mandalore for a while. So this, just the mention of a friggin' moon dragon, we go off the rails with another deep dive into Mandalorian history.
So you definitely got way more out of that than I did, because for whatever reason, when I searched Ordo, I just could not come up with that level of detail. But I'm going to throw a theory at you, and I hope the listeners chime in on this one, because this one kind of, it's a completely different direction, but I want to frame it this way. I personally think that the Ordo moondragon is an invasive species. I don't think it's native to this moon. And I think Ordo is a reference to planets with the Ord moniker, like Ord Mantell. So if you look up, Ord planets, there's a whole big list of them. Of course, it's all legends. Yep. But Ord, if you dive in on that, Ord actually stands for Ordnance Regional Depot. So these Ord planets served as military outposts at the height of the Republic around 13,000 BBY. So long, long time before Knights of the Old Republic, long before the movies. On the planet, we don't see any signs of civilization, but later on, when Omega goes into the burrow, we see all these, machine parts and other bits of tech that are laying around. So, if you think of the Ordo moon dragon as being an invasive species, much like rats on a ship coming across from Europe to America,
Right.
that they could have migrated on starships and could have established colonies basically on these ordnance regional depots. And that's what
like on a crash ship, sort of like a rat or a
exactly.
Yeah.
And
Like a
that's
rat on a
kind of where I went with it. I think it's just an invasive species that is there that stowed away in a starship.
I think we're super close. So the idea that these clones are an accelerated version or an early version of clones that are special. The Empire wants them.
Yep.
The Kaminoans want them.
Yeah. Well, the Kaminoans still keep calling them property.
And especially when they need them for this new template for their Phase 3 clone, which they keep talking about.
Doesn't that change the dynamic though? Like I just assumed from my viewing experience of the films that the Grand Army of the Republic was a bought and paid for army, but the Kaminoans keep going back to
kind of like a rental.
Yeah, it's a rental army. So is the Republic government paying a premium for every killed trooper?
I kind of have a weird little sort of side issue too at one point, which is why doesn't the Empire just
we're taking over?
Right. So there's another thing that we have to understand here, that there are more people that are more powerful, ostensibly,
right?
Not than the Emperor personally, but in terms of the Empire.
Yeah.
Because in the Mandalorian, you'll recall, we had, which we speculated might be a Night Sister. We had that I can't recall her name, but the character that was the head of a shipbuilding guild. That's right. Right. Who made, ostensibly lots and lots of credits off of supplying we see the Empire not, just seizing assets. We see them actually going, well, we have to pay for clones and we have to pay for ships, and ships are cheaper than clones. So, and when you get the impression, like, why don't they just seize? would that mean, like, a cool what if just popped into my head? What if the Empire tried to fight the clones? Wow. Well,
Legends.
Maybe that's the situation you might get in. Who are the clones loyal to? Oh man.
This is one aspect of Legends that was thoroughly, sort of fleshed out with these sort of loyalty arrangements, where we talked about it before. Like Corellia, for example, was a semi-independent world that still, fell under the Empire, but they were kind of left alone because of their contribution to shipbuilding.
Right.
Same thing with Sinar Fleet Systems, the makers of the TIE Fighter. It's a big corporate entity that was basically allowed,
right,
more or less carte blanche, as long as they kept chugging out the war machine. So again, with these Disney era properties, you know that they're going to mine, as they have already done, they're going to mine sort of the best aspects of Legends. And I think, you and I have already agreed on this one, Hank, that we love the idea of watching the Empire unfold, politically speaking.
It's super cool.
And I'm really curious to see, what elements of Legends are going to come forward into this unexplored, or at least visually unexplored era of Star Wars. So who knows?
I think the idea that Ordo is a planet now all but canonized.
Yeah.
And then the link to the character Ordo Scarata.
Yeah.
Who is one of the prime clones, if you will.
Yeah.
And if we're into a story now where there are clones that are not degrading, as per Nala Thay and the very, maybe these are those null clones. Maybe that's our nice link in there. Certainly a bigger dip into the Mandalorian pool, because you get Canderous and you get all of Clan Ordo, and then your Ordo thing, which I didn't even come at. That's a brilliant stroke too. So somewhere in there is a really deep pool of stuff that they've gone with, and I kind of thought we were watching a kid's cartoon.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, there's no denying that this one comes out the gate and it's pointed squarely at, teen and older. But you still have these elements that are still,
Kid friendly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like sort of Lauren pointed out, they have to find a way to address these big issues because kids are going to watch this.
Oh, of course they are.
So they've got to do things like what Crosshair is about to do,
Right?
Tastefully.
So at this point, Hunter tasks Echo and Tech to get the other systems back online and orders Wrecker to stay here because of his head injury. Wrecker protests, saying that he's fine, but Hunter firmly tells him, "You're staying." So Omega immediately and enthusiastically volunteers to go with him. And at first, Hunter rebuffs her, saying it's too dangerous. Unshaken by Hunter's concern, Omega asserts that she's a part of the squad now, and Hunter acquiesces. Back on Camino, the new elite squad recruits undergo a medical examination. During the exam, they talk about the war being over and question who's left to fight now. The male recruit, who is designated ES-01, mentions that with the Empire, he gets fed and paid and has a roof over his head, and that's more than the Republic ever did for him. In a darkened control room, Tarkin, Rampart, and Prime Minister Lamassu observe a real-time hologram of the elite squad troops. Lamassu politically fights for the continuation of his clone program by asserting that conscripts will never reach the same level of military proficiency as the clones. But Rampart fights right back with "skills can be taught," adding that the loyalty of those who willingly recruit is what I see tremendous value in. Tarkin then orders that the elite squad, under the command of Crosshair, should be sent to Onderon to wipe out Saw Gerrera's camp. It's the exact same mission he sent Clone Force 99 on, the mission which, in Tarkin's assessment, they failed. Neither man notice that Lamassu has quietly left the room.
But not before giving Rampart a bit of a sideways glance.
He does, and I think that speaks to Lamassu's. We talked about this before. They're really up against the ropes. Like, their entire organization is on the verge of collapse, and there's really kind of not a whole lot they can do about it.
Right.
Which could go back to episode 1, why the Coruscant Guard is there.
So that, just what you said, Hank, about why doesn't the Empire seize control? Maybe that's what they're staging for with having the Coruscant Guard there.
Certainly.
There's another thing here, though. We already have an endpoint.
Yeah.
We know from The Mandalorian that Camino cloner was rolled right into the Empire.
Yeah.
So at some point, Tarkin is going to make the play.
Yeah.
And this whole facility will just become part.
Leaving Rampart there on Camino at the end of the episode does really work towards setting that up.
Yeah.
That there is an Imperial presence there permanently.
Like maybe even if they're just there to, take as much information, technology, equipment, whatever they need to maybe move it to Exegol or what have you.
Oh, right.
What was the project called? The contingency project that the Emperor left? It was in the Battlefront 2 game.
Oh, my lord.
Project Scourge or something like that.
It's like Hellfire or Scorched Earth, or it's something like that.
Wow, we're awful experts. But that doctrine, I'm wondering if the cloning facilities at Camino were destroyed during that, because it was about destroying their own infrastructure so that it couldn't be turned against them.
Yeah, it couldn't be turned against them. That's right.
Their legs back on Exegol.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the ramifications of what's being set up here are going to be felt all the way forward, 35, 40 years in the future. This episode of Fandom Power is brought to you in part by CollectorsPlatoon.ca. CollectorsPlatoon.ca, organizers of the annual Toronto Collectors Platoon Toy Show. Check out CollectorsPlatoon.ca, the Canadian home of Ian's Display Accessories, specializing in action figure stands for figures of all scales. Visit CollectorsPlatoon.ca today.
You're listening to Fandom Power.
Here's the other thing too, right? I mean, the Kaminoans themselves, I mean, again, it's legends, but I mean, they're cloners, so that they are themselves genetically tweaked. They've genetically tweaked themselves. Like, we don't see their species outside of prequel era Star Wars. Are we gonna get some? Are they gonna be wiped out of existence? Are the Kaminoans as a species so small that the ones that are on Kamino are it? Who knows?
Well, really. And I mean, we only have. You don't see Kaminoans. Damn, we
cloners.
Don't see them. we don't see them running around like.
That's what I mean.
Dozens and dozens and dozens of them. We actually only really focus on 2.
3 if you include the other female from Attack of the Clones.
And some in the comics, certainly.
Yeah.
But not, you don't get the idea that this is their home world, that this is all of the, there's a vast species of these clones.
No.
On, it's like this facility that's owned by this species that we know very little about, except for that I guess they are called Kaminoans and they are on the planet Kamino, which we know has been removed from the
and that's the thing, right?
Planet, too, right?
Secret. So, not in any galactic database.
Right. And removed from the Jedi database from the inside. So, how long has it been removed?
Yeah.
Was it Sifo Dyas? Was it Dooku before he turned?
We don't know.
Wow. Yeah, cool.
The Kamino, particularly Prime Minister Lamassu, he mentions it a couple times previously how, in the first episode, Chancellor Palpatine has always been very supportive, and Tarkin corrects him, Emperor Palpatine. So there's a very, very specific shift where so at one time Lamassu had the ear of Palpatine, but that's not the case anymore.
Now you're going through Tarkin.
Right.
Deal with it.
And I mean, he knows that. Lamassu knows that I don't have a direct line to him anymore, so what the hell am I going to do? Yeah. So back on the unnamed moon, Hunter tracks the moon dragon while Omega follows. She asks Hunter if she could learn to track like he does, and he tells her that it's an enhanced skill and that they all have one. He names everyone but Crosshair, but Omega fills in Hunter's omission and tells him, "You shouldn't be angry with him. It's not his fault." Hunter struggles with the fact that he left Crosshair behind, and Omega, ever the optimist, tells him, "Then we'll find a way to get him back somehow." Then the two move off further into the darkness. Coming back to that replacement, theme and dealing with sort of the emotional fallout of what's happened. And now, Hunter's still he is grieving. He's grieving the loss, and he's internalizing that, like it's his fault.
Yeah, and they couldn't have hammered home the idea that clones are brothers more.
Oh my God, yeah.
7 seasons.
I know, yeah.
And now we have, and I was explaining this to a friend of mine who was asking some questions about this morning, and I was saying, well, the difference between these clones and other clones, irrespective of the malfunctioning chip or not, is the level of free will. So when they disobey orders, it's about a choice. It's about, and with free will comes morality.
Yep.
So the clones that are following orders blindly, just adhering to their programming, they're not making moral choices. And so that's the difference with this Bad Batch, is that we see them make moral choices, and not necessarily the right moral choices, because there is there's a scale. And so when you remove programming and you put in the free will, there is some part of the personality that's going to be either good or bad there. And I think that explains Crosshair, and I think that it explains, I think that'll play a lot into how these characters deal with their chips.
Well, I agree with you, and as much as this episode, let's just lay it right out, this episode does set up the notion that at some point we're going to try and get Crosshair back. And that might be the long play for the whole season, is to redeem him, because that is another prime Star Wars theme. This episode proves just how ruthless Crosshair is. And you say there's a choice. And even if they can redeem him and deactivate the chip, I think there's a part of him that may in fact choose to stay with the Empire.
And I think it plays into what I was saying about morality, and that like a good guy is a good guy and a bad guy is a bad guy. Like if that's your alignment, certainly alignments can be changed, but if that's your alignment and programming is removed and you're introduced to free will, then you're going to tend towards your alignment, I would think. Yeah. And we certainly, unless the procedure that the Empire is doing on Crosshair is creating, is
additional programming.
It seems like it's, the clones were never like bent on murder.
Right.
And he seems sort of more bent on, like.
Well, he says it plain as day, right. Why am I in charge? Because, I'm the guy that
yeah. And instead of the idea of winning the day or, well, at the same time though, there's probably no compunction with killing. You wouldn't let 6 droids go.
No, that's true. And I mean,
so if you're reduced to the base, and if you could separate yourself from that, and these are just targets, just like droids. Now, while we feel some empathy and want to sympathize with the humanity of the characters, perhaps that's what the programming does. Because I thought about that. Why is it making them super aggressive towards everyone? And not just against Jedi.
Not just military targets.
Right. It seems to be, so there's more to Order 66, if you will, whether it's a reset to your original just base programming but it seems to be, they're much more aggressive and tending towards
because
violence.
the line from Tarkin to Nalase back in the first episode was, can it be strengthened or can it be enhanced? And she just says, yeah. So it's like, they're not changing anything. They're not inputting any new programming per se. They're just reinforcing what's already there. So when you talk about how dark this episode is, and then you realize like, oh, the capacity to murder civilians is in all of the clones.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, it's an order given. He says eliminate the camp.
That's right.
Not eliminate specific targets.
No, you're right. Yep.
Scrub the whole camp.
That is the mission.
We find ourselves 35 years in the future, at the village with Laura Santeca.
Yeah.
We ask ourselves, how can a group of soldiers just gun down innocent villagers? And there's your answer.
Well, and there's that nature versus nurture thing. And, it seems to me that, the First Order, whether at the behest of Palpatine or not, took a page from the Jedi playbook. Because, as Finn, as it's laid out for us, First Order stormtroopers are indoctrinated very early, as children.
Like the Jedi.
Like the Jedi.
Yeah. Or Mandalorian children.
Exactly.
So there's a trend. There's a trend of slave labor going on at Disney.
Yeah, really. So an Omicron-class shuttle streaks across the screen, and inside we see the elite squad standing ready for deployment. I kind of dug this scene just superficially in how it mimicked the First Order landing boats and the stormtroopers standing holding one arm up like they're on the subway or on the bus. I thought that was kind of cool. ES-01 questions the decision to place Crosshair in charge. He posits that if clones are so efficient, then why is the Empire recruiting soldiers like them? In a display of what could only be described as alpha male posturing, ES-01 tells Crosshair that a change is coming, and he should watch out. Enjoy being the commander for now. This guy is really set up to be that, I presume wherever they recruited him, he was probably hot shit, wherever he came from. It just doesn't measure up in this case.
Right. Big fish, small pond.
Yeah, really. In a jungle clearing on Onderon, a small force of Saw Gerrera's fighters, along with a few civilians, load some crates onto a shuttle. Interesting point about the shuttle. They call it a shuttle, but did anyone pick out that it's the same modified LAAT gunship that the Coruscant police used on Coruscant?
Oh, good call. No, I did
not.
Yeah,
same animation model.
Nice cut.
One of the fighters tells the leader that Saw is waiting for them at the rendezvous. The leader looks down at his data pad, noticing that their outer perimeter has been breached. But before he can issue any orders, a volley of blaster fire rings out. A bolt hits him in the chest, silencing him forever. The fighters mount a hasty defense, but a smoke canister obscures their line of sight, and the elite squad advances. This one's kind of neat. There's an interesting little visual cue for us. So the elite squad are wearing Phase 3 clone armor, and they're armed with Clone Wars era weapons, so the DC-17 rifle and the DC-17 pistols. So up until now, I don't know if you noticed this, but what color are clone blaster bolts?
They're always blue, and now they're red.
Now they are red. So nice little visual cue that...
Hill question again for you.
Yeah, yeah. Back on the moon, Hunter and Omega continue to track the moon dragon until Hunter sees a flashing light coming from between two rocks. It's the power capacitor. Beckoning Omega to stay under the cover of the rocks, Hunter moves to retrieve the part, but is ambushed by the moon dragon. The beast knocks him down and turns to run off with the capacitor in its mouth. In the fray, Hunter's breath mask has been knocked off, and he quickly is overcome by the noxious atmosphere, falling unconscious. Omega finds Hunter's mask and places it back on his face and tries to wake him, but he lays there unresponsive. She desperately calls for help on a comlink, but gets no response. There's the effects of that storm that we talked about.
Yeah,
there it is.
Seeing the dragon scurry off into one of the hollow tubes in the ground, Omega steels herself and takes up Hunter's pistol. She then vaults into the underground burrow to give chase.
But not before she makes sure he's breathing and fine.
That's right, yeah.
Because you see the visual cue of like the breath inside that mask.
Yeah. I mean, she's
like,
pretty desperate there for a second where she's kind of doing the, like trying to wake him up. And then, he's not going to wake up. So this is an interesting dynamic too, because as much as she's a child, she's an enhanced clone.
I mean, finish the mission.
Right. And so she automatically, takes up the gun and she turns and just moves to carry on. Does this harken back to the first episode where she picked up the rifle and laid down suppressive fire so that they could make their getaway?
Certainly. In that one, she was acting like Crosshair, and this one she's acting like Hunter, and something to the idea that we were talking about. Perhaps she's got a little bit of all of them in her.
Yeah.
And hence the name.
And
Omega, yeah.
Like throwing back to that Russian training, next man picks up the gun.
Yeah, first man takes up the rifle, second man takes up the rounds. When the first man falls, the second man picks up the gun.
I would not be surprised if her designation is 9905.
Yeah, really. Meanwhile, on Onderon, the firefight rages on. It's a turkey shoot, and the rebel fighters are cut down ruthlessly. No one is safe, and even though the shuttle manages to get off the ground, a well-placed sniper shot through the pilot's chest sends it crashing back to the ground.
And is this our first time seeing a flame trooper, like in this era?
I don't recall. See, they may have used flamethrowers in the Clone Wars, but I can't recall a specific instance of it. So it may very well be. The last remaining fighter and the terrified civilians debark the shuttle. Crosshair demands they give up Guerrera's location, and the fighter tells him that she doesn't know. But even if she did, she wouldn't tell him. And without so much as a blink, Crosshair executes her with his sidearm before he turns his attention to the civilians. He invites the civilians to share any information they might have on Saw, and when they have none to offer, he declares them of no use to the Empire and turns as if he intends to continue the execution. At this point, ES-01 challenges Crosshair, saying they signed up to be soldiers, not executioners. There's that morality come into play again.
That's right.
Crosshair asks him if he's refusing an order. When he answers yes, Crosshair uses the moment to answer ES-01's earlier question about why he was placed in charge. Because I'm willing to do what needs to be done. He then summarily executes ES-01 with the assertion, good soldiers follow orders.
And now everybody has to have a conversation with their kids.
Well, they don't show the shot on screen.
No, that's true.
Blaster, and you see him fall.
That's right.
So, true to Disney, you don't see him die on screen. You just see the aftermath.
Yeah.
But prior to that, when he's about to execute that first trooper, he's cold in that moment.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because he says the line as she's dropping, I believe you.
That's right. And so this is where I kind of latched onto that idea that, you know what, even if they can get to him, there's this interaction that he has with the other elite squad troops and with Saw's fighters, I don't think he's coming back. Really, push comes to shove. I mean, yeah, we want him to come back. We want him to redeem, but I don't think it's there.
No, probably not. They sort of set him up. I have to go back and watch the original run, but they sort of set him up to be a little bit darker than the rest of them anyway.
Yeah, certainly, like we said before, he is the coldest, non-emotive.
Right. And, initially you're like, oh, that's the sniper mentality.
Yeah, cold and calculated.
Right, so.
It's also, murder. Cold and calculating.
It's a true story.
So Crosshair orders the remaining squad members to finish the mission, which they do, mowing down the 4 civilians. So back in the burrow, Omega, under torchlight, follows the tunnels that we presume are made by the Ordo Moondragon until she comes into a larger cavern that's littered with mechanical parts. She sees the capacitor and she tries to retrieve it, but the dragon roars up from behind her and she turns to face it, dropping the part. Meanwhile, Hunter has come around and he hears the raucous from underground. He calls out to Omega, but his call is unanswered because at that moment, Omega is face to face with the dragon. Blaster pistol in hand, she steadies herself for what's coming. Hearing Hunter's call, the dragon actually turns away from Omega for a moment, and Omega cowers against the cavern wall. Having turned her torchlight away from the creature, the dragon begins to settle. Thinking for a moment, she turns the torch completely off, and the dragon picks up the capacitor and begins to calmly chew on it. Omega can see the energy from the capacitor coursing through the dragon's body. Thinking that the torch would make a more attractive meal, she turns it back on and tosses it to the side of the cavern, and the dragon takes the bait. That's a pretty cool, there's a couple things going on here. One, I kind of thought maybe the flashlight was sort of incensing the creature. You got that impression that every time like it was in direct light, it was like, ah!
Well, a thing to point out here, I don't know how prevalent it is, but the whole planet kind of throws me back to the movie Pitch Black.
I was just thinking that. Yeah.
And like all those creatures that, are like allergic to light, basically.
Yeah.
And the same, underground tube structures. But for me, it seemed like Omega had her Ray moment right there.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, like with the snake thing.
Yeah, and because she's got it dead to rights.
Oh, yeah.
And she hesitates.
Yeah, and I didn't understand, it's very clear that when I say she cowers, that there's no other way to describe that. She cowers, but I couldn't figure out why. I mean, she, like you say, she had it dead to rights when it turned. So, and I mean, the first watch through, I'm even saying, I'm like, okay, pull the trigger. And she doesn't. So, and that creates the opportunity to solve the problem another way. But yeah.
And I think it speaks to her intuition again, whether it's force related or not.
Yeah.
That she's able to understand what the creature needs in the moment.
I guess so, yeah.
Why I sort of say it's like her, like Andy said, her Ray moment, where
yeah,
or even an Ezra Bridger moment or a Kanan moment when speaking to the spiders.
Yeah.
That's the way that Jedi or force sensitive beings can connect with.
I thought that for a second too, the force connection, but then like you say, Ezra Bridger, and I kind of think, do they want to repeat? Because let's face it, that's his shtick, right? That he's very in tune with animals. It's not impossible that other Force users, have that same sensitivity, but we try not. I think Star Wars has this, where it comes to like character traits, they don't necessarily like repeat them with main characters over and over again.
No, it's true. It might just be like, so, in the role-playing games, all Jedi have like a set of abilities they can do.
Right.
There's variations and stuff, but there's like control powers, there's knowledge powers, and you don't really vary much from that. This is what a Jedi can learn. And there's not a lot of room for imagination, if you will. But it seems like, when they're moving to more sort of specific sets of powers. And
You
have Cal Kestis's ability to like Indiana Jones the history of an object by interacting with it. And certainly Ezra's ability to. So it may be just that we're canonizing more of the Jedi's abilities.
I think so.
Or, in a larger. So if she can tap into those, maybe it just is a little speaking to her, maybe being force sensitive.
I thought it was cool that when the Moondragon goes after the flashlight, the bioluminescence is a lot brighter than it was chewing on the capacitor, which is kind of funny because when they're taking out the old one, they give them the warning, hey, that carries a big charge, be careful.
Right.
There's less charge now. It's been for a while.
Yeah.
Well, it was a new one, so maybe it wasn't powered up yet as much, right? Spotting the capacitor in the bioluminescence of the dragon, Omega grabs it and she crawls out of the tunnel. Hunter lifts her from the tubular opening and asks her, "What were you thinking going down there alone?" Well, she cheerfully questions.
The mission was to retrieve the capacitor, wasn't it?
And then she throws, "I tracked the dragon like you did." Seeing the DC-17 pistol in her hands, he asks, "Is that my blaster?" And she tells him, "Don't worry, I didn't have to use it." So that's pretty cool, that whole, would I be able to learn how to track like you did? Mm-hmm. And she even makes a point, like she, how she picks up the dirt and she rolls it between her fingers. And
that's right.
I just thought it was a cute moment where, when a child does something and they the whole, "Hey dad, look at me. Hey dad, hey dad." It was very much that moment, like, look what I did.
I got the pad.
And I thought that was really cute.
It's true, and I noted last episode I mentioned like the way she was watching them about to leap into hyperspace. She's very learny.
Oh yeah,
very observant.
Very much.
And I mean, it speaks to the actual nature of a child. They're going to pick up what you do, whether you're actually sitting there and physically instructing them or not. They're going to learn.
Well, exactly. And I mean, any parent will tell you this, that people who say, "Well, I didn't teach my kid that." Well, you may not have told them do this or don't do that, but guess what? Modeled behavior is exactly that. You're teaching. So they will, imitate what's going on around them.
That's right.
So the elite squad shuttle returns to Camino. Governor Tarkin and Vice Admiral Rampart are there to meet it. When the ramp drops, the men see that the squad is short one soldier. Rampart dismisses the loss as an anticipated casualty. They knew the risk.
Send a probe droid to monitor this one.
I know. Yeah.
They just take this one for road, right? Like,
yeah.
Oh no, yeah, we actually believe the official account this time.
Yeah. Crosshair reports that even though Saw Gerrera wasn't on Onderon, the rest of his camp was dealt with. And as the squad marches off, the two officers remark that the test was a success. Rampart insists that the success is further proof that his initiative has potential. Tarkin agrees, further adding that the Clone Trooper program is a cost-prohibitive relic of the past. But until the time is right, it will continue to serve a purpose. This ties directly into that whole idea that, we'd always sort of assume that, clones didn't, they all didn't just shut off and die one day, that they kept using them for a period. And I like the idea that, this really suggests that we are going to see this transitory period. So with that, Tarkin departs, and his final remarks, "Then I leave this project in your capable hands."
Mm-hmm.
Admiral.
That's right.
Bit of a legacy line there. It's how, Piet got promoted in The Empire Strikes Back. Except nobody had to die for this promotion.
That's right.
Well, ESO1 did.
Oh, that's true, yeah. Well, you know what? That guy, hot shit as he thought he was, just wasn't hot enough.
No. There's some analogous things to Finn there, too, the way that he didn't want to turn on civilians.
No, it's interesting, too.
He just had, it's a good thing Captain Phasma wasn't on her. I'm murdering my own troops today.
Yeah. So Admiral Rampart is surprised at the promotion, but he thanks the governor, nodding his appreciation. Meanwhile, in a secluded hallway, Lama Su and Nala Se discuss the impending doom that their organization is facing, as Rampart would have the clones completely phased out. And as it turns out, the genetic material gathered from Jango Fett is degrading.
It's really interesting.
Lama Su tells Nala that now is the time to begin the next phase of their operation. Apparently, Nala Se has been experimenting with producing a superior clone. And Lama Su believes that if she is successful, it will secure their relationship with the Empire. So, pretty on the nose here. I think we can all assume that Omega, if she is not the superior clone, she's at least an early attempt at one.
Yeah, and Nala Se does say here, we only need one of them.
That's right.
They're our property. That's what the Prime Minister says. They're our property, and we only need one. And in that moment, my heart wants to think about Omega, but they actually cut right to Crosshair.
Yeah.
And they already have Crosshair in their possession. So when I think, we're gonna grab some of Crosshair's DNA because we need some
that's right,
some fresh stuff,
some non-Jango. Yep.
And then we're looking at the uniforms, and I'm gonna quadruple stamp down.
Yeah,
on
yeah.
What I said
I'm right there with you.
And say that this Crosshair is going to be the genetic template for the Death Troop.
Yeah, it's exactly what I said. As you say, Nalase suggested that such a contingency cannot be achieved without a direct source and that the clones will not return willingly. But Lamassu retorts that they are Kaminoan property and they only need one. So just my own sort of thoughts, I kind of question it. Is it suggestive that they are trying to combine the genetic defects of every member of Clone Force 99, that their defects combined will essentially create a super soldier?
I mean, it's entirely possible. This also could be the birth of the idea that they might be able to clone Force-sensitive beings, and therefore that's what right in line what you said. Omega is a version of an experiment, if that's her end game. But it leads into a whole bunch of kind of cool stuff, like in certain aspects of Legend, because all of Legends, aren't connected to one another, and that's kind of the weird thing about Legends. But we have early forays into the cloning process in the Force Awakens games.
Yeah.
And the attempts that, like the idea that Vader had his own cloning facility.
Yeah.
And was over and over and over trying to attempt the perfection of cloning a Force sensitive being. And with their propensity to canonize things, and I know that Starkiller is a huge fan favorite. There's ways that we could start to connect. Do you follow me? The way that we could start to connect the idea of cloning Force-sensitive beings, like we get that in Vader number 11, seeing Luke's hand in a glass case on Exegol, and then thinking of the Dark Empire storyline, the idea that the early drafts of Force Awakens actually, the Chris Terrio opened with Luke's hand and lightsaber floating through space.
Yeah.
Things of that nature. The idea that we might get a canonized version of the Thrawn trilogy in terms of a cloned Luke Skywalker versus a cloned that all this cloning stuff and a secret project and the next phase of clones that are valuable to the Empire all just make my brain just
when part of putting the show together obviously is there's a research component, and so you invariably end up looking at different things, and we try to keep it fresh and we try not to use other people's ideas. But I mean, I'm not gonna lie, yesterday doing the research and I saw a split screen that put an image of Crosshair, no helmet on, up against Starkiller. You can't help but see the similarity.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh cool.
I mean, with Sam Witwer was the modeling for that character for both games, and so with his shaved head and the image off the cover of the game, and Crosshair with his short cropped hairstyle, very similar, and being kind of lean in the face in a similar way. You're like, oh, maybe,
I could see it.
Yeah,
I can vision it. Yeah, wild.
Yeah. So retiring to their quarters, the elite squad settles in. And it's the former quarters of Clone Force 99.
And you get a little bit of he's not all the way bad. He has a moment of introspection, just a tiny moment when he stares at the where Wrecker would carve their thing in.
Crosshair.
So there's a part of him that's not all the way,
No, I get it.
I still sense the light in him.
He sees the hash marks in the wall and all the other trappings, of his clone brothers in the room, and
right.
He sits silently on his bunk and he has this look. He's troubled. There's something going on there. With the capacitor back where it belongs and the other systems repaired, Hunter gives the order to get us out of here. The Havoc Marauder lifts off and smoothly leaves the moon behind. When Wrecker comes up from the back of the ship, Hunter questions, "Where have you been?" Wrecker crouches down in front of Omega and he tells her, "Come with me." As the three make their way to the back of the shuttle, Wrecker gestures toward a ladder partially covered by a curtain. He beckons Omega up the ladder, and pulling back the curtain, she can see that Wrecker has dressed up the area with blankets, a string of lights, and his very own teddy bear. He tells her, "It's your own room."
Which did you notice in the descriptive audio? It's a Nerf.
Oh, I did not.
Yeah, it's a stuffed Nerf.
I missed that.
Yeah.
He says, "What do you think?" And of course she says,
"It's perfect."
Wrecker tells her that he thought he could make the ship more like a home for her. And Omega picks up and hugs the teddy, the Nerf, saying, "I've never had my own room before." And Hunter tells her, "Well, you're a part of this squad now, too." Omega smiles and then goes back to admiring her room. And then we fade to black and conclude the episode. So, man, there's a lot going on there in a read between the lines kind of way.
Yeah.
Doubling down on that family theme.
Yeah, I mean, all these... Patch. Yeah, the dad patch. The dad batch. The Death Trooper thing really fascinates me because we've only seen them in two sources. We see them in Rogue One, and we see them again in the Mandalorian. And in both instances, the Death Trooper ratio to Stormtrooper ratio, it's so small that, you know, it would be no surprise if, in fact, the Death Troopers are, in fact, superior clones.
It makes sense. Sorry, I was just looking for the Death Trooper action figure to read the bio on the back, actually. Well, not implicitly implied in Rogue One. It's in the periphery, like the Pablo Hidalgo books and all the deep dives into the art of and the story behind and all that have you. They're genetically altered to be, they're taller. They're like almost 7 feet tall. They're physically more imposing than your average stormtrooper.
Yeah, and it's like immediately apparent in Rogue One. It's very clear like how lean and how tall they are.
Right, they speak a different language, and if Crosshair isn't anything but leaner and sort of taller than the rest of them, I don't know what it. So it lends itself to that.
That's another thing, right? Rogue One was the first. No, I guess Rebels technically was the first Disney Star Wars project, right?
That's correct.
But Rogue One is the first Disney Star Wars film. And so let's just talk about that for a second. Force Awakens? Yeah, you're right. Are the Death Troopers actually speaking another language? I know they're the comm chatter. It's garbled.
It's an encrypted sort of weird. Yeah. It's not a language, but an encrypted version of speech only for their unit.
Let's talk about the story group aspect of how Star Wars is supposed to be moving forward. And I question, was this mapped out back then? Here's a Death Trooper. We have an idea of how we're going to get there. Let's do it.
It's possible.
It's very possible. It may be that they're just like, they've got this deep breadth of stuff that they can dip into and definitely explore. So they may just be connecting threads like retroactively, and threads that don't have any necessarily loose ends, or it's not a stretch to connect a Death Trooper to a genetically altered Stormtrooper.
No.
And do it organically and retroactively, and it wouldn't. I don't see it rocking the boat. It's not a major. It's not like Luke Skywalker has actually been a Twi'lek woman the whole time.
Wait, what?
Scrolls, right? So it's nothing catastrophic, and it's a neat through line because it explains the stuff we love, and we're the kings of wanting so much detail in our Star Wars that it's sickening the most.
Well, here's a possibility for you. Going back to the Wrecker hitting his head and possibly malfunctioning.
Yep.
You have the thin, lean Crosshair. You have the physically imposing Wrecker.
Yeah.
You take those two and put them together, maybe getting a physically imposing, tall, lean type clone.
It's entirely possible. But as she said, you only need one, and I mean, they've already got one. So,
but the seeds are planted; they're coming back.
It is true.
Going to try and get them.
This is the thing. Why did Lamassu make that comment about not coming back willingly? Like this whole assertion of clones as property thing. We talked about it before on the show. Where do the Kaminoans have a contingency? I mean, if they can build in a contingency for the Emperor, can they not build in one for themselves?
I wouldn't see them not doing it.
So
right, yeah. And then when you talk about like what I said the other day, Order 65, which isn't necessarily canon, but it does exist in the lore, and it just may have been to illustrate how ahead of the game that Palpatine was. He beat them to the punch.
I mean, if you were, Prime Minister Lamassu or one of his, inner circle, and you knew that your entire operation hinged on the continued delivery of a superior military force, and you didn't really have any sort of guarantee. Like, I got to tell you, like, if it were me, I'd be building in something that my own troops could not turn against me.
Yeah. Like the 3 laws of robotics.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, certainly. Yeah, like directly, absolutely.
It would be a very interesting, what if, to see, as Andy pointed out, with the Coruscant Guard being there on Camino, to suddenly, have them turn against, the recruits, the Empire or the Imperial recruits in an effort that the Kaminoans can, at the very least, escape, extinction.
I'm remembering too, wasn't there like a separatist invasion of Camino at one point?
I believe there was.
Yeah, so like, I'm thinking like, I thought a lot of this infrastructure was destroyed during that, and I can't recall now if that's canon or not, or where it took place.
I'm gonna have to look that one up.
Jeepers.
I just assumed, from what we saw in Attack of the Clones, and I mean the Clone Wars and now the Bad Batch have really not done anything to build on or dispel, but I always just assumed that initial scene when we first are introduced to Camino and the one, I guess that would actually be a 4th Kaminoan, the guy who is riding the pterodactyl manta ray thing coming out of the ocean.
Right.
Sure, but it's established like it's this stilted, multi-domed facility. I just assumed that was one city on the planet, that there must be other stilted facilities or colonies somewhere else. Well, maybe
you think if the Gungans can have like underwater cities, and the Kaminoans are over here building clones, they have to have like technology that would probably allow them to, colonize under the water as well.
You would think. And I mean, the fact that, that guy he comes up out of the ocean. Are they water breathers too?
Quite possibly.
Yeah.
So maybe the top one is just like, your airport.
Exactly. Right. So there's something going on below the surface that we don't know about. That would be a cool exploration. What do you think, guys? Where do you think this is going next episode? Any ideas?
Could be dark.
I'm really hoping that, they're going to have to repair the ship. If they can get off the moon, there's a planet right there. We might get a little more Ordo.
Yeah, maybe we'll get that. Yes, it is Ordo.
Certainly, one thing that they haven't done, and that is just aching to be done, is beyond having the genetic template be Jango Fett, they haven't explored the connections between the clones and the Mandalorians. Because at the end of the day, the entire Grand Army of the Republic is a Mandalorian army.
Yep.
And so I think it like our proximity to a Mandalorian world, possibly.
Right.
And just based on an Ordo moon dragon.
Yeah.
Ordo moons, perhaps a moon of Ordo, perhaps.
Yeah.
So, I like that idea. I like the idea that Filoni's world is Mandalorian centric.
Oh yeah.
And I have high hopes for like a deeper connection between the new stuff.
Yeah.
Certainly, I love all the it's not lost on me some of the Easter eggs in this, like the scenes on the moon, especially outside with the breath masks on, are exactly like the sort of vibe that you get in Empire Strikes Back with the Mynock.
Yeah, in the space slug.
The tiny little things in this episode, if you guys caught, like the when it's chow time, Hunter's holding a box. It's the same box Luke Skywalker has in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, that's right.
On Dagobah.
Right. Mine.
Stuff that stuff remains perfect, but I like the way that we're connecting new properties together and making it a really cohesive whole. So what have we got? 13 episodes left.
We do, yeah. We're 3 in.
Man.
Three in, so 13 more.
Are we taking the sniper scope from that one scene as a nod to Predator?
Oh, I absolutely saw. I'm like, oh, Predator vision.
Yeah, because like normally he's not using that heat vision.
Yeah,
I guess with the smoke and all.
It totally makes sense that they would.
Yeah, cool.
This is more just for you guys. Did you watch it with the descriptive video on?
No, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think of descriptive video British man?
Better than the other.
Better than Clone Wars.
Yes. Not as good as The Mandalorian, but better than Clone Wars.
What did you think of the misidentification they misidentified Crosshair as one of the Elite Squad, and then one of the Elite Squad as Crosshair. Yeah, they actually attributed the sniper shot to one of the other guys, not Crosshair.
I didn't catch that. So
yeah.
I didn't notice, did they name any of the other?
No, just ESO1.
And I think ESO3 got
there's
a tag as well.
A thought I had, and this goes back to me reading the comics and stuff. Every single one of those Elite Squad characters, except the female, actually has spoken lines. But they actually spent a lot of screen time on her, and she's sort of always, if you rewatch it, she's got her head down or to the side and shifting and stuff. And I thought, like, at first I was like, man, her eye shape.
Yeah.
She reminds me a lot of Sabine's mom.
Oh,
but
you
then
know,
I
there is some of that.
side each at them, and it's the wrong thing. But I fell on, there's this, and it might be a rewriting of what's already canon, but it's comic canon, and they do alter that quite a bit.
Yep.
There's this character called Elena Zara.
Okay.
And she's a hand-picked Imperial recruit, and in the comics, she's trained by Tarkin personally.
Oh, really?
Much later in the canon too. So at some point, he would have to be introduced to her, but he elevates her to like a lieutenant colonel, and she becomes I guess like Tarkin's hand. You know the Star Destroyer Tarkin's will.
Yes.
She becomes the commander of
that.
Oh,
okay.
And she's even personally involved with Vader. Vader meets her at one point, and Tarkin, is lauding her ability as a commander and her attack strategy and all this. It's possible that could be the introduction of that character into a visual canon, because she is very prominent in the comics.
I saw something yesterday that suggested that she might be connected to Iden Versio in some way.
I also had a little Iden Versio thought, but Iden Versio would have been far too young at this point.
I guess so, yeah. I think it was more along the idea of the notion of an elite squad, and that Iden Versio was sort of the, a prominent commander of an elite squad.
That's right.
Yeah, that's pretty loose if you ask me, but, that just tells you, like,
there are moving parts, and we could go different directions.
There definitely are, and mileage will vary. So, fans of our show, I'm sure you guys are, consuming this in other forms as well. So I hope our interpretation stands up to your scrutiny. Yeah, we don't like to weave them loose, but sometimes that's all you have.
That's right.
All right,
I like to throw them out there in case they're right later.
I do too. Yeah.
I don't mind throwing out something early and then being proven wrong. Like I'm so happy about that. So
yeah.
And then with the case of Zara, like if I hit a bullseye on that 15 episodes from now, I'd be like, wow, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So I don't mind throwing out a few bobbers in the water.
Like no, not at all. And I'm just gonna go out right now and just for those of you who've listened to the first episode where we covered the first two episodes, and I just want to say that I am coming around. I am a believer. I love Star Wars as a property, and the show is making me a believer. So glad to be back on forum today. Glad to dig down on this one and give you guys the depth of analysis that we are accustomed to doing. So very happy about that. Anything else you guys want to touch on before we wrap it up?
I'm super excited about this show. I'm glad we're still doing Star Wars. It's going strong. It's not waning. It's not just action figure stuff. That's it's quality stuff that we can get behind as fans.
Yeah, it's not just to sell toys.
No, which is nice, because I don't even know if they do that anymore. Do they still do that, Wes?
Toys? I don't know. I live in Ontario. I'm not allowed to buy toys right now.
I'm not allowed to buy anything right now.
I can't walk into a store and buy toys, and all the Star Wars I want.
I had the weirdest experience with Amazon, I got to say. That was super strange. I ordered that Zeb character.
Zeb, he's fantastic.
I got a sort of a notice from Amazon saying that Canada Post, my package was in Halifax, but that because of the pandemic, the delivery had been delayed.
Oh.
And through a sort of series of searching, what I found was that the staging area for Hasbro toys in Halifax is the Dartmouth Toys R Us warehouse.
Oh, no way.
So while you can't buy a Zeb on the shelf there.
You can go and pick it up.
But they're closed from the pandemic because toys aren't essential.
Right.
So eventually it got mailed to me by Canada Post. But the idea that we could do a Rebels-style strike on the Toys R Us warehouse and get all those toys that we can't friggin' get on the shelves
it's
liberate them from the corporation.
It's frustrating for me being in Ontario, and because, toys are non-essential. I mean, I know. I mean, as a toy retailer, I'm a non-essential retailer, so I'm closed to curbside only. Walmart apparently is now doing curbside. So the most current, if you're a Black Series collector right now, the current wave, which includes Crosshair and Asajj Ventress, is on the pegs now.
Wow.
So if you were lucky enough to get one for me.
Is Walmart allowed to put curbside stuff non-essential?
So I don't know.
At the beginning of this third lockdown, they did put out an email saying that through online pickup, they would not be selling any non-essential items.
So I can walk into Walmart right now and buy anything I want.
Yeah.
But they're limiting the capacity of the store to like 25%, that's not a lot of people in Walmart. It's kind of freaky. Actually.
Yeah.
But the pegs are empty.
So I've heard, yeah.
There's no Marvel stuff. There's no Star Wars stuff. There's some King Kong. They're like really bad King Kong stuff.
Yep.
There's Motu peg warmers.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
A bunch of Battle Cats that are on sale for $12 and stuff. I'm thinking of picking one up.
Oh man. Well, Andy's just frustratingly throwing his arms up. I think he wants you to buy him one.
Oh no, I just got one for $21, and I thought that was cheap.
Oh no. Okay.
Oh yeah, no. I saw multiple Battle Cats that were going for $12 at Walmart, but and then I can't remember the other two characters that were peg warmers. A character I'm not super familiar with, and then I think Manny Faces.
Manny Faces, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Possibly Ram Man.
Maybe.
But none of the no He-Mans, no Skeletors, no Teelas. I couldn't find anything that I would want. And a lot of DC stuff, but a lot of DC stuff, but it doesn't ring true with me. After listening to that I sent you guys the link to that video with Scott talking about how if it's available for retail, it's not meant for you. And
that's right.
Actually, it makes a lot of sense.
That we're only 20% of the market share for toys.
Right. So the fact that there even is a chance of having a Black Series figure on a peg is that's the only reason those are there are for a whim. You buy your kid
that's right.
Nostalgia like that. I would be a closet fan of Star Wars, and I would see a Stormtrooper on the shelf, and I would buy one for my 5-year-old.
I love Stormtroopers, therefore you as my child will love Stormtroopers.
Right, but they're not, and this is but then my question is if we can understand the market and an expert like that can understand the market, why do these chain stores then get contracts for exclusives that never make it to shelf?
So we talked about when I interviewed Scott. We're talking Scott Knightlick, a former Mattel executive. When I interviewed Scott, he talked about store exclusives are basically what happens is a toy company, let's say at New York Toy Fair or like a San Diego Comic-Con, they'll show off essentially one wave of figures. So that may be 6 figures, right? Mm-hmm. And so when they typically show these things at New York Toy Fair, it's at the beginning of the retail year. So the idea is based on one wave of figures, you as Walmart and Target and other big box, you will commit to 12 months of product. So you are buying the other, 3 seasons worth of product based on the first 6 figures you saw. And so the retailer exclusive is an enticement to the retailer to buy a year's worth of product. If you buy a whole year's worth, we're going to give you this exclusive product for your store.
That makes sense.
And that's why these retailer exclusives exist. And as a retailer, I totally get it. As a collector, especially a collector who lives in Canada, it pisses me off.
When I see the Instagram posts of the figures that are on shelves that I can't even find images of on the internet.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Let alone purchase in real time. It drives me insane.
I went to a Walgreens in the U.S. a couple of years ago, hoping to find, some Walgreens exclusive stuff, and there was nothing there.
I not thinking that the 3.7 line was ever going to die.
Yeah.
I went to a Walmart in Hawaii, and it was described to me. I had to ask somebody, where's a Walmart around here? And they were like, well, there's a country Walmart down the street. And I was like, what is a country Walmart? And I went there, Wes, and it was the biggest Walmart I ever seen in my life.
Oh, wow.
And the toy section was like, it was crazy. The toy section was so huge, and there were so many Star Wars toys on the shelf, I couldn't even begin to process it. And the thing that there was the most of was the old Walmart exclusive 3.75-inch Black Series, what became the vintage collection.
Yeah.
There were so many of those, I was just, my jaw dropped. I couldn't keep pace with it. And the only thing Lauren was like, we're not here for Star Wars toys, we're here for Hawaii. And I was like, I get it, I understand. And
but it's so small. It's so small.
Solo Chewie with the goggles on.
Yeah.
And that was, and not thinking that the rest of the Solo line would be so easy to find. When I got back to Canada, I couldn't find, I think I have 4 Solo figures from the 3.75 POA. But yeah, no, I was blown away, just like you say, like a Walgreens in the States. I would just, holy cow, there was so many things there that weren't being consumed. And you start to realize, there's warehouses full of things not being consumed. Hasbro, get them to me. Yeah.
Andy, you had something you wanted to end on?
Just a minor thing that I picked up watching this time, which obviously I should have picked up on the first episode, but in the opening sequence, as they flash across all the helmets, normally for like the Mandalorian and everything, it's been C-3PO, Darth Vader and the really recognizables.
Yeah.
For the Bad Batch, they've shifted that.
It was all animated characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that. When you said that to me, I'm like, oh, yeah.
So they're really giving it its own footing.
Yeah,
like in every
cool.
detail.
Yeah, like they've made just that, the little Star Wars, I don't even know. You can insert the music for this, but to punctuate the part, but the with the heads. Yeah, all animated characters.
Absolutely. And it's like, it's sort of passing the mantle on, which is why I think we've had Tarkin for 3 episodes, and I don't think we'll get a lot of Tarkin moving forward, but we'll get a lot of Rampart.
I thought so. He's
that mantle passing in this.
Absolutely.
Sort of symbolic of that.
Yeah. Tarkin's going to be the bigger level bad, because I don't think we're going to see, the Emperor per se is pretty reclusive, in this time. Like they talk about him in his policies, but there's nothing.
They say, though, we're laying the groundwork. This is the bottom floor we're building.
It's his agents that are out there making it happen. And I think so. Rampart's going to be the recurring baddie, and Tarkin will be the one level up. Yeah, as it were. I think
not in a traitorous way or in a like a way that he's going to become the good guy eventually. But Rampart is our Agent Callus for this show.
Yeah, I was going to say that he is the Callus, but he's not. No, he's too into that whole, I guess we could say Compnor, for those of you who are fans of Legends. He's he's laying the foundations of Compnor with Tarkin. All right, guys, that's it for me on this episode of The Fan Batch. Hopefully you guys will stick with us and come back and join us on the next one as we deep dive on episode 4 of The Bad Batch. All right, guys, until next time, be good. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Same batch time, same batch channel.
Batch channel. Bye for now,
safe,
guys.
Everybody.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Fandom Power. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll be talking about another one of your favorite fandoms. Fandom Power is a Sawcast production.
Have you ever wanted to start a podcast, but you didn't know where to begin? Maybe you'd like to try podcasting without having to invest in any recording equipment. Do you have an idea for a show, but you're not sure how to develop it? Let Sawcast Productions take care of all of that, so you can focus on what it is you want to say. Sawcast Productions offers podcasting solutions ranging from recording and basic editing to fully produced episodes complete with all the audio embellishments of a broadcast quality show. And when your show is ready, Sawcast Productions can distribute it too. Contact us online today. So, what do you want to say?